On 2CH Magic 1170 with Kel Richards. If you just joined us, good evening. You missed a fabulous hour. We had Elvis and Pat between 6 and 7. And in this hour, it's Elvis and his keyboard player, Larry Muhoberac. We always like to hear the story of anyone who worked with Elvis, so this is a story I think will interest you. Elvis's keyboard player on, as I said, a bunch of his movies in his early years in Las Vegas was Larry Muhoberac. Now, during the concert years later, Larry handed over his role as Elvis's keyboard player to Glenn D. Harden. But Larry worked with Elvis for some years and got to know him well. And these days, Larry lives in Australia, but he's now old and he's in a care home. But Larry's wife is Andra Willis, herself a professional singer before she met and married Larry, and she can tell us his story. Andra Willis, good evening. Welcome to the Elvis Show.
Hi, Kel. Nice to talk with you.
Now, before we talk about Larry and Larry's work with Elvis, you spent a good few years as a professional singer yourself. You sang with Lawrence Welk on television, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I left the Lawrence Welk show in order to go back to just singing in groups and things. So I basically had quite a long career as a session singer.
Oh, right. So it's your voice in the background. We hear a whole lot of songs.
Yes, that's right.
Was it because you were in the industry that you ran into Larry?
Yes, actually. We first met at the home of a mutual friend. He was having a party, and Larry was in the process of moving to L.A. That was after he left Elvis's show in Vegas, the comeback show. And but I didn't see him again for probably a couple of years. And then we found ourselves working together on various and sundry, recordings. So that's how it all came about. Now,
everyone is interested in Elvis. There's an interesting quote from Larry where he talks about the fact that he'd worked with all these other people. He'd worked with Barbra Streisand, worked with Ray Charles, but everyone asked him about Elvis. There is something special, isn't there?
Yes, I think just about everybody loves Elvis. And so they want to know about him. And Larry doesn't usually have very much to impart because although they work together on sessions, in Memphis and also in L.A. and of course did the comeback in Las Vegas in 1969. But as far as I think, having a real close personal relationship, Elvis, invited the band to all sorts of different things.
Yep.
But the band sort of left it to everybody else to be, Elvis's
to gather round.
Friends. Yes, there were a lot of hangers-on, I must say.
Did Larry ever talk to you about Elvis as a musician? I mean, we sometimes hear other people saying, "Look, Elvis took charge of his recording sessions. He had, for a pop singer, he had a remarkable voice and a remarkable musical intelligence, and he controlled the tempo of things and so on." Did Larry ever talk to you about Elvis as a musician?
I know that he often talked about how spontaneous Elvis was, whether it was recording or whether it was on the stage. In fact, on the stage, you never knew what he was going to do next.
Well, the band just had to catch up and carry on.
That's right.
Right. Now, Larry did work on some of the movies, and recordings for the movies were done in the Hollywood Radio Recorder Studio. Do you remember how many of the movies he worked on with Elvis?
I don't know. A lot.
Right.
Because, he was doing keyboards for Elvis for such a long time.
Did he ever tell you how he got started working with Elvis? Did he ever tell you that story?
Larry lived in Memphis, and he worked for probably the biggest jingle company that ever existed.
Right.
It was called Pepper Tanner.
Yep.
And so there was a huge staff there, and they did something like 10,000 commercials a year. A lot of them were like station IDs and things like that. So,
yep.
But I would surmise that Elvis heard about Larry through that. Probably hired him for a session and loved what he did, and just kept hiring him.
Now, the South we associate with music, Memphis, Nashville, places like that. Was Larry from the South?
He was born in Indiana, but he grew up in New Orleans.
Oh, well, New Orleans we think of as being a music city as well, isn't it?
Yes. And he left there to move to Memphis.
And that was in order to what, further his career?
Yes, well, the same fellow that had the party where Larry and I first met was just gathering the people that they needed to, follow through on all the jobs that they had at Pepper, and that was, in Memphis. And so he happened to, his name is Floyd Huddleston, and he was a friend of ours for so many, many years. Lovely man, songwriter, and just great fellow.
Yeah.
And he ran into Larry in a club where Larry was playing. He was playing piano and singing. And on a break, he asked Larry if he would be interested in joining that jingle company.
In Memphis, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Larry said, well, I'll think about it. And so anyway, as it turned out, he accepted the job.
And, of course, Memphis is a place that a whole lot of music comes out of, so it's a good place for a musician to be.
Yeah, exactly. And they were fantastic, too. Amazing musicians there.
Now, Larry knew Elvis professionally, not personally, but did he ever talk to you about what Elvis was like, what kind of a person he was to work with professionally?
Well, he often talked about how gentle he was, that he was always really polite, just very giving, and quite a lot of fun. He had a great sense of humor. And so Larry always thought that there were never any real problems or anything with Elvis, which, most of the time the artistic type are, sometimes a little difficult, but he never said anything about Elvis at all being difficult.
That's
he
interesting.
Just said that he was just wonderful to be with, and,
Now, a quick final question, Andra. How is Larry doing these days?
Well, he's doing pretty well. He has frontotemporal dementia.
Right.
So his primary problem is in communication.
Right.
Which is why he wouldn't be able to do an interview like this. He remembers people, but sometimes he doesn't know their names. But if you write the names down,
yes,
he knows who they are.
Does he respond to music?
Yes, very much so.
Right. So if you played him something by Elvis, maybe something that he was on, he would respond and recognise it and all that kind of thing.
Yes, definitely. And whenever he sees Elvis on, television, on the Foxtel, or, where there's the videos, whenever he sees Elvis, if that catches his eye, then he's immediately just glued to the TV.
Andra, it's been lovely chatting to you. Next time you visit Larry at Hammond Care, give him a big hug from all the Sydney Elvis fans. He won't know who it's from, but that doesn't mind. We'd like him to get a big hug from us.
Okay, that's no worry at all.
Andra Willis, what a nice lady, what a lovely lady. And the story she tells about her husband, Larry Muhoberac, Elvis's keyboard player, is a great story. Okay, a bit more of the music that they made together. These are two more of the movie songs done by Elvis with, on keyboard, Larry Muhoberac.